This is my first time bringing Wine Chan out in like 5 months, but it's Berserk, and why not? Hey, it's Romania Black. No, I have been outside working all afternoon. It's been hot and sweaty, and I got back and was like, oh, I want to watch some Berserk. And then I was like, I have this chilling in my refrigerator, and I literally haven't drank any wine and hardly anything at all in like 5 months, just for various reasons. And tonight I was like, I can have this. I can do this. And what show would be better with Wine Chan than an episode of Berserk, right? Right? So that's where we're at. Ooh, it's blackberry and it's delicious. So yes, I'm excited because these last 4 episodes have been absolutely wonderful. I am absolutely all on board with this series. I really, really enjoy it. I'm so excited to watch it. I'm probably going to binge it. It's going to be okay. I've told myself, I'm like, if I just watch like 2 or 3 episodes a week, maybe. We'll see how that goes. Maybe I would like to do like 2 episodes a week so I can get ahead. And that way get ahead of spoilers, get things prepped because I have a lot going on my channel. But we'll see where that goes. But I'm really very excited. The first episode, as I'm recording this, has come out on Patreon, so that's fun. And so there's been a lot of good feedback. Nobody's being spoilery, which I'm really appreciative of. But going back and rewatching episode 1, I did realize something I've not really talked about in a while because I kind of forgot about it. And that's the very opening scene that we have with Guts. He's getting his sword reforged. So that means at some point, because then we see him in the past, he has a sword. He has the sword here in the present. Griffith made the comment, he's like, oh, well, I can't handle this sword. It has to only be you. So at some point, either Griffith lies and he takes the sword from Guts when whatever goes down, or Guts loses the sword, like it falls off a cliff, he gets in a battle and it gets knocked out of his hands and off into a ravine, or something happens or it's stolen from him. At some point, Guts is going to lose that sword. And I feel like that's going to be a major moment in this series, and then he's going to get it reforged. I'm assuming he's going to get it reforged after he gets the brand. However, that's going to go down. We don't even know what the deal with the brand is. We don't even know, right? So, but whatever it is, the funny thing is the brand that Guts has kind of reminds me of the Behelit, because the little Behelit says that will give you power in exchange for your flesh and blood. And in episode 1, the brand, these spirits, they're like, we control all of you, your flesh and blood, your fears. So I'm like, is it a similar form of that? Is the brand like a enhanced version of the Behelit that like is literally like, oh, well, you can have this amulet, or you can go all in and get like the brand tattoo and then have it like infused into your body? I don't know, but it's so curious. They set up so much in episode 1 that we're only on episode 5, and I'm already thinking like, how are we going to get there? And we still have, 24 episodes, but I'm still like, we're, almost a fourth of the way through this series, and I feel like we're far, far away from all that. So I don't know, but I'm super curious what's going to happen. Our characters, we're developing a lot with Guts. We didn't get a lot of Corcus or Casca last time, but we're getting more with Guts and Griffith. We're setting up their chemistry, their bonds, and the idea that Griffith wants to be a king, and 3 years have passed. So Guts is like 18, and Griffith, and now the Band of the Hawk is like an actual threat, and Griffith wants to be a king. So I'm curious what we're going to get with that. So y'all, I poured a glass of Wine Chan, and I was like, let us dive into Berserk and just see what we get. I have a feeling that's really good. I have a feeling it's going to be fun. So yeah, I'm excited, y'all. I hope you all are too, but we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive into Berserk episode 5 and just see what we get. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Berserk, you don't let me down. Cheers! I'm all for this time skip. There's some things that have been established in this time skip that obviously we need to touch on, Whiteboard Coon, but we're starting to set some things up. I was thinking about this during the end credits, but this series is 24, I want to say. Look at my playlist here. We got 24 episodes. Yes. So if we think about it that way, then if we split it into 3 arcs, then episode 8 is the end of arc 1, which the rule of 8, right? So that's if we think of it that way. But I've been told that you can either do it in the Western tradition and having 3 acts for a story, where you have the beginning, the middle, and the end of an arc, or you can look at it through a Japanese structure, which is 4 acts, which is the first act is the introduction of your characters, the second act is the conflict and setting things up, the third act is the twist and the reveals, and the fourth act is your climax and your conclusion. And I think I want to treat Berserk in the 4-act structure, because it seems like the mangaka probably does a very traditional structure with it. So if we're looking at it that way, then the first 6 episodes are setting up our characters, where they stand, and getting to where we're about to introduce the conflict. And I think that's what's about to happen, because what we've been doing with the characters so far is introducing them and their dynamics with each other, and then setting up what their goals are, and then setting up that there could be some kind of conflict. And I think this whole thing with the Midland Kingdoms making Griffith a knight and the people not too happy about it on the inner circle, I think that's going to be something that's going to set up the conflict that's going to kind of fester from within, right? Because, yeah, does Griffith become king of the Midlands? That's the question. They said that they were talking about the Midlands in episode 1, right? They were talking about things were bad in the Midlands, and they said since Griffith became king. So the thing is, do we think that Griffith is going to overthrow this kingdom and become king of the Midlands? And that's going to be a thing. So that is the question. So let's break this up here and talk about this. So we have our character goals. All right? What we know about our character goals, and we'll put a little and sign there. That, and in pretty pink letters, relationships. Because this episode was all about characters, what they're doing, what they're wanting out of this, and relationships. And I realize that does not look very good. Maybe that one's better? Not really. Green it is! Green for Griffith it is. All right, relationships. Yep. So, yeah, we have a lot of them in this series, and I'm glad we finally got Judo's name. I'm glad we finally got it. I don't know why it took us so long to get there, because it wasn't a big dramatic reveal. It wasn't something that was like, he walked up and they're like, oh, hey, Judo. But here's the thing. And again, Attack on Titan, there's a character in that series, without spoiling anything, that you don't know the name of that character, and then suddenly the name is just thrown out there, and you're like, oh, there's the character's name. Oh, well, that's just something. And then you find out later it's a big deal. So I'm still not totally leaving out the realm of suspicion for Judo, saying, oh, we just randomly found out his name. What about that? I still think there might be something to it, because why didn't we introduce him like that in the beginning? Why did we just now wait to throw it out there randomly and just be like, oh, there's his name? And maybe there's nothing to it. Maybe it's something that's totally random and the mangaka just didn't see fit to tell us his name until now. But I feel like there's something to it, right? I feel like there's something to it. So we have characters and their goals, right? And their relationships with one another. And I think that's important. This episode seems very much like a setup episode for what's to come as we go from one arc into the next, right? The 4 episodes that we started off with were our preview, technically 3, because episode 1 was, he was already an adult, but 2, 3, and 4 were setting up the Band of the Hawk, Guts joining them, how he got to be a raid commander, and how he got to earn Griffith's trust. So yeah, so we start out with the same intro that we have about fate and men not being in control. And we see the Grim Reapers on the battlefield, led by the White Hawk Griffith. And there he is. Yep. And then we start the episode, and we have the OP. So we're going to get past the OP. A Wind of Swords. Nice. Yeah, this big wind. I feel like the wind may be somewhat symbolic in this series, because we've seen the wind kind of blow across like Griffith and everything, and it's usually a wind of change. The wind comes from the west, comes from the east, whatever. And I feel like a Wind of Swords, like just showing the mercenary group showing up as a whirlwind and just kind of taking over. So yeah, I can't believe that Rickard must not be very old, because he must be like only 14 or 15 in the current timeline, because he was like, I'm just really young. So he must have been like 10 or 11 when Corcus took him in. I'm fully convinced that Rickard is with Corcus as like a little group package, because I feel like he's always been next to Corcus. So Corcus might have taken him in, and Griffith was like, sure, if he can do something, Why not? And then Griffith having helmet hair the last 3 years has given his hair like a wavy quality. I don't like it as much. I like his hair when it was straighter, but what can we do? It's just it looks more like an owl now. It looks more like feathers than it did before, right? Maybe the Behelit is making his hair go all crazy. Maybe, I don't know. But something that's really cool is, let's talk about Guts. Guts has changed quite a bit from the start of this series. He's changed a lot. And I think that's really cool. Like, he seems to have a very good rapport with the men that he's with. Casca, she gets onto him. She gets onto him, and I guess this kind of goes under relationships too. Gets onto him for straying from the plan. But Guts says to that effect, he is still somewhat of a lone wolf. Now, lone wolf and mad dog are apparently two different things, because he gets very offended when she calls him a mad dog, which, if you remember back when Gambino died, those people said he was a mad dog. So he remembers, he still has some trauma from that, and he's like, don't you call me that, because I think that Guts is like, I know you're not like them, don't stoop to their level. But the thing that he tells Griffith is that he tells Griffith he does care in his own way. He's like, I do care for these guys, but it's just like, Guts is not, it's so funny because Guts is not a sentimental, compassionate, mushy-gushy guy, but he is extremely emotional. There's like a difference, right? There's a difference between somebody being like mushy-gushy, like lovey-dovey, like all about you, let me be affectionate, and somebody that is just like raw emotion all the time. And Guts is the latter. And so he does care, but he doesn't know exactly how to express it. And I mean, that's understandable. You know, growing up, Guts didn't really have any, experience doing that. So why would he do it now? And they've been in the battlefield the last 3 years. They didn't have exactly a lot of time, I'm sure, to hug each other and telling each other how much they love each other. So Guts is just like, I'm just doing things my way. And Griffith plans for that, right? So I do like the idea that Casca is still on Guts' case a lot. I love her spurs. I love the boots. I love her outfit. I love the spurs. She seems to be, what's interesting is the way they frame her throughout this episode is much more feminine. They frame her, like, when she's standing, she has her legs kind of one over the other in kind of like a sexy, demure pose. I mean, she's still tough. She's still like the third in command. But they draw her a lot more feminine in this episode, or they kind of give her a little bit more sexuality. And I don't know if maybe that's just, the male gaze, and that's just how Guts kind of maybe sees her. Maybe he recognizes her as a woman. But yeah, the way that pans up from her legs up to her face, and she just looks big sister Casca, and they're all kind of gawking at her. And she says, we need to talk. Can I have your ear for a minute, Captain Guts? Yeah, so they're both captains of different guards. And he's like, oh, hey, start without me. I'll catch up. And they're like, she's going to yell at him again. So yeah, it is knowledge that they are frequently yelling at one another. So Guts and Casca, Guts is constantly yelled at by Casca. So that does make me feel a little bit better going into this, especially when we get her apology at the end. I've said throughout this whole series, I don't want her to just be a female character so she can be a love interest for Guts. You've already got Griffith. Why do you need to do that? But if Griffith ends up becoming an enemy down the road, and maybe Casca and Guts will form an alliance. Maybe Griffith betrays both Guts and Casca, and they have to join up together later on in the manga or whatever. Who knows? I mean, that might become a thing. But I don't know if it'll happen in this series, especially if we go back to where Guts is by himself at the end. But I do think that it's important that Casca has been talking with Guts. They say again, like, this has been a constant thing. They've been talking over and over again this entire time. All these 3 years, they've had conversations. And she's like, you keep on straying from the plan and doing whatever you want. And she's like, you're going to get your men in danger. And what Casca thinks is and what her problem is Casca is still wary of Guts and his lack of order. I think that Casca is still afraid at the end of the day that he, up until the apology, up until the moment where he kind of goes and warns Griffith about the trap, I feel like up until that point, she still thinks that Guts is going to just turn coat and run and leave them all if he feels like he needs to. Because she's like, the fact that you're not obeying Griffith shows that you don't care about his orders and that you're willing to turn on them. She's like, how do I know you're not just going to leave one day and then we're all screwed? So, yeah, I mean, she has every right to feel conflicted about that. But she's still wary of Guts up until she realizes he wants the same as her. And that is to follow and protect Griffith. This just became a love triangle. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, there's no romance between Guts and Griffith and Casca. Okay. Sure thing. Sure, Jan. So, but yeah, it's not necessarily sexual. It's not necessarily romantic, but it is a triangle relationship where both Guts and Casca want to follow and protect Griffith. The only thing keeping Guts there at that place with that band, the Band of the Hawk, is Griffith. I think if Griffith wasn't in charge, Guts would turn tail and run. And maybe that's what ends up happening when he becomes king. We don't know yet. But I think Casca kind of figures that out by the end of this episode. And she's like, okay, that's why I'm here. I'm only here. She doesn't like putting up with Corcus and the other guys. I'm sure she likes Judo and Rickard just fine. But she's like, the only reason I'm here is because I'm following Griffith. So if that's the only reason you're here, we have something in common. And that's what I've been looking for this whole time. I've been trying to find a way, okay, show if you're going to try to ship me, Casca and Guts together, I got to have a foundation. I got to have something. Guts and Griffith are over here eye-fucking each other to death. I need something between these two. And so at the end of this episode, I was like, all right, that's our foundation. They both have that tie to Griffith. That's where they can connect. That's the common ground they find. All right, show. Now build on it. I feel like this show has done such a job building the relationship of Guts and Griffith that I'm like, if they want me to ship Casca and Guts, I gotta have some build. And I feel like this was the foundation of it, right? But she gets onto them saying, what were you doing? We had a plan. We were supposed to cover the flank and contain the enemy attack. But despite your success, you didn't go along with the plan. You charged straight into enemy lines. That wasn't what was supposed to happen. Do you think you're some kind of hero? And that's so funny because in just the last episode, 3 years prior, they ended that raid by saying Guts was a hero. And so there's this really cool thing where Casca's like, you know, she's been watching this whole time and watching him. She's like, did you take this whole hero thing to heart? And I don't think that Guts has, but it would be very easy to think that based on how everybody around him is treating him. But Guts is like, she's like, we were lucky this time. I just love that Guts has the stereotypical man looking at a woman nagging face. That's like, he's like, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't know how to answer you. Like, it's almost hilarious, like how they draw him in this moment. It's actually funny. She's like, you could have put us into danger. And then she grabs him by the cape. Try to keep your position in mind sometimes. And he just smacks the hand away. What's so funny is he is enormous. Guts is huge. He is a very big man. And he's grown a lot in the last 3 years because now he's so much bigger than Casca when that was not the case 3 years ago. But he just kind of like shoves her away and he's like, no, it's fine. And then he just looks at her and he says, I apologize. I'll be careful in the future. And she says, you always say that. You're not sincere. And the thing about it is, again, Guts is just not very good socializing with anybody to begin with. And Griffith kind of finds it endearing, it almost seems like. But Guts is just like, I don't know how to handle you. I'm sorry. And she's like, you're always insincere. You just repeat the same thing. She's like, the fact you haven't changed at all from who you were 3 years ago. You know what he acts like? He acts like a boyfriend that doesn't want to get in an argument with a girlfriend. That's what he's acting like. He's acting like she's like having an argument with him, like they're dating, and he's just like, I don't want to challenge her because she's just going to yell more and yell louder. So I'm just going to sit here and take it until she goes away, and then I'm going to grumble about it. Like, that's exactly the vibes he's giving off, right? But they're not dating, right? She's just critical of him, and she's just like, why won't you listen and do things different when you first sunk your teeth into Griffith? And that's the heart of the matter, right? That's the heart of the matter. She thinks that Guts has somehow ensnared Griffith. She's like, I don't know what our dude sees in you, but you've sunk your teeth into him, and now he's just all about you. And what's funny about it is that there's two ways of looking at it. One is that she sees it from the angle of, I don't know what Griffith sees in you, Guts. I don't get it, but you're influencing him, whatever. She sees it as Guts influencing Griffith. That Guts makes Griffith go soft on him for whatever reason. She can't figure out why. But the other side of it is, no, Griffith has Guts in the palm of his hand, just like he has Casca, and they're his favorite pets. He does whatever he wants with them, and they do whatever he wants, and he just has them to use. So it's curious that the way that Casca looks at it is not from a position where Guts is the one being used, but he's the one using Griffith, when we as the audience kind of see it as the opposite, right? It's fascinating. But Guts doesn't really counter her or argue with her. She says, all you care about is swinging your sword in battle. You don't care at all about your men. You're just a mad dog. And that's what gets him. Like, nothing else gets him except that line. And he grabs in her hand and says, say that again. Say that again if you dare. And she doesn't look scared. She just looks at him like, why did you have that reaction? Yeah, that's how she looks. For the reaction she has at him saying, at him grabbing her at that line, it's not someone that's afraid. She just is looking at him like she's trying to figure out, okay, I just insulted you like 20 times, but the moment I say the word mad dog, you had an instant reaction. Why? Like, so I don't know if that's going to come up again, if she's going to ask him about it later. I feel like after they had the apology at the end of this episode, maybe it's opened some doors. Maybe the two of them will start to get to know each other better. Maybe she'll ask about it. Maybe now that she knows that Guts is wanting to protect Griffith like she is, she'll, follow through. And we'll talk about that more later. But that's when Griffith shows up in his beautiful white armor. And she's just like, oh, there he is. I will say, can I say, the legs of his armor look dumb. I liked from the waist up, Griffith's armor looks really nice. It has like the cool feathering. The cape is all beautiful. He has the purple undershirt and everything. But from the waist down, he looks like the Michelin Man. I don't know why it's got all the bubbles and everything. It looks very weird from the waist down. I don't know what to do about it. And Griffith's like, oh, I'll give him some advice. I'll counsel him. And she's just like, ugh. She's like, you're too soft on him. Blah, blah, blah. Grumble, grumble, grumble. She's like, you're too soft on him, Griffith. And she says it loud enough that, of course, Guts can hear. And Guts is like, what do I do about all this? And then, of course, the guys are all standing outside waiting on her, Corcus and the others. What I am glad about is nobody is giving Casca the, oh, you like him routine anymore. No, if she's been arguing with him the whole time, they're all cleared like, oh, no, she doesn't like him at all. So they don't give her grief about that. But Corcus is still trying to kill. He's still trying to get Guts killed, which is kind of hilarious at this point. Corcus is still out to kill Guts. What amazes me about this is it's so out in the open. Like, the guys all in the troop have to know this by now. They have to know that Corcus is trying to actively kill Guts any chance he can get, because he's been going at it for 3 years. But nobody does anything about it. Nobody tells Griffith. Nobody acts on it. I guess they all just assume at this point it's an empty threat and it's almost a joke and that Corcus isn't actually serious anymore. But I find it fascinating that Corcus is still so out in the open about wanting to kill Guts and trying to enlist Casca to help him. And she's like, no. And she's like, I'm willing to bump him off whenever. And then we cut back to Griffith. And he's just like, you two fight like cats and dogs. I mean, again, they're polar opposites. They're oil and water, but sometimes what's funny is that you have Griffith and Guts who have this relationship where they instantly connect with one another. and they can just talk about whatever, and it's so instant, and they have instant chemistry. And then you have Casca and him that are almost like a couple. I feel like they're the definition of two different couples in a series, right? Might as well put Griffith up here. We're going to put Griffith over here by himself. But you have the idea that Griffith has this relationship with Guts where they trust each other completely. They trust each other completely and get along and share secrets. Or at least Guts feels like he can tell Griffith anything. And I think that's because in the last episode, I think that Griffith orchestrated that manipulation perfectly. He was like, that whole nude thing with the bath, it reeled Guts in to be like, you can trust me. And then when he's on the hill, he's like, I've never told anyone this before in my life. Like, just luring Guts in, making him trust him completely, right? And so when he says, oh, you guys are like cats and dogs, you have Griffith and Guts who have this relationship where they trust each other completely. They share each other's secrets. They feel like Guts feels like he can tell Griffith anything, right? Whereas with Casca, I do think they have a very interesting dynamic. I think Casca and Guts are more similar than they think they are. I think they may come from similar backgrounds and they have similar oppressions against one another, and they come at it as in they trust Griffith completely and want to serve him and protect him, but they're from similar backgrounds. It's just one of those things where they're so similar they butt heads, and where Griffith and him are so different, there's an attraction. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, he's like, you guys fight like cats and dogs, and you have for 3 years. You've spent almost 3 years in the same group. Why can't you get along any better? And all Guts can say is, I do care about them. That's the one thing that like stuck with him from her nagging at him. She goes, I do care about them. In my own way, I do care about my men. That is huge. That is like an insane development for Guts. Like, for Guts to go from be this loner character that was called a mad dog that, you know, didn't want anything to do with anybody, was going from mercenary group to mercenary group, just getting his money and go, and had no connection with anyone, to go from that in 3 years, we see him not only relish in becoming a leader, becoming the raid commander, but he calls them my men. Like, he takes them in. He cares about them. And that's so baffling to me. Like, that's character development is huge. And it's just given to us in like one line. And it's like, oh, okay, wow, Guts has changed a lot. I'm not who I was in the past. And Griffith is like, it takes me back to our fight. And Griffith, though, has Griffith changed? Or is he the same? That's a big question, right? Because Guts is, he's changed a lot from 3 years ago. Has Griffith changed? I don't know. I don't know if Griffith has changed. He doesn't seem like maybe he has. He says every duel should be like that. Like, that duel was so much fun. And then he calls back to him, and Guts says, about today's battle, I'm sorry. And the thing about it is, he does the exact same thing that Casca will do later to Guts by apologizing. And so I feel like Guts has found a way to connect to Casca through realizing that she's kind of like him. I'm fine with that. I have nothing against the Casca and Guts ship. Like I said, as long as we set it up and it has some development and it doesn't just come out of nowhere and it's like, oh, you have a vagina? Well, you clearly have to love the main protagonist. As long as it's not that, I'm cool with it. But just as I could work with the ship of Casca and Guts, the Griffith and Guts ship, I mean, does anybody deny this? I can't feel like anybody can deny it. It's not even subtext. There are moments where they are looking at each other across the battlefield and everybody else in the group's like kind of behind them going, hey, we're here too. Like they just are eye screwing each other from across the battlefield like at least 3 or 4 times in this episode. And I'm like, it's not even subtext. It's just text. It's just there. And the fact that Griffith reveals that this entire time, and what's funny is Casca's words kind of got to Guts this time, because she's like, you just keep going against the plan and you could cost Griffith and the others their lives. You need to stick with the plan. And Guts finally apologizes because he cares for Griffith, and Griffith makes note that he's been making changes to reflect Guts's instinct. So that's a rather interesting manipulation too, because what that suggests is that Griffith has been this entire time he knows that there's a chance Guts is going to go rogue, so he's just been making the plans with that in mind this entire time. And what's so manipulative and genius about it is that it secures the victory, making Guts look very well, because the plan was always meant to incorporate that possibility of what Guts was going to do. So of course everybody's going to praise Guts, because they're like, wow, you were the leader of that group, you made it all work out, because that's how it was orchestrated. Like, Griffith takes a lot of the spotlight off of him and gives it to Guts, which is rather interesting. Again, Griffith is a fascinating character. He doesn't just take the limelight for himself. He very much positions it to where other people get the limelight besides him. And I don't know if he intentionally doesn't want the spotlight on him so he can do things without people noticing, or what the deal is. But he says, I drew up these battle plans with your tendencies in mind. So I knew what I was doing. We're fine. I just love that Guts has these like ragamuffin robes on, and Griffith just looks so ethereal, right? So he gets knighted, not straying from virtue. And then, of course, there's double talk going on during this entire scene, right? Sacrifice thyself ceaselessly. So the men of the army are like, this is unheard of. As he says, render peace, service for peace and security. A mercenary granted knighthood. And they're like, what on earth is the king thinking? By the spirit of the kingdom of Midland. They were of a great help. So yeah, Griffith he's moving on up. He is up the ladder to knighthood. He's getting close to that king role. He's just a couple steps away. He's gone from a common mercenary leader to a knight. And it's just like, he's like, this is the way. I've got the behelit. I'm going to become ruler of the world. This is how it goes. They were a great help. And then they say, nonsense. As he says, the title of knight is bestowed on thee. And so we see the king. We see the queen. We see this little boy that I'm assuming is the son. He looks innocent and possibly has a death flag on him. And then we have the other guy that's like the main knight. And he's the one that has the basketball lapels that is just like, not for any of this. Hey! No! So yeah, they say the title of knight is bestowed upon them, they say they would be thieves without war. I love that line, because that line is so true. They're suggesting, it reminds me a lot of Vinland Saga. They're like, if we weren't at war and we didn't need you to win these battles, you would be thieves and we'd be arresting you and possibly killing you. But because we need you and your men to win, we're going to knight you. Like, that, just showing the circumstance and what it does to the situation. It's a fascinating line, but I love that line in here. Like, if it wasn't for war, they'd be thieves. Which, again, without giving anything away, Vinland Saga is about Vikings. It ties to that too. When they're not at war, what do? What can you do? And I wonder if that's going to tie to when Griffith becomes king, if the mercenary band that he's led, if they won't have anything to do, what do we do then? What do we do with that? So, I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. But yes, separate thyself from falsehood and witness their services on the battlefield. Uphold the law. Know the subjects. And they're like, if we sit back now, we'll disappear. Meaning, if we do nothing, we're going to disappear. So we have to get some help or we're going to fade away. And Griffith looks very serious about this knighthood. Like, this is a very serious moment. And Corcus says they have no choice but to acknowledge our ability. He's like, they need us, so we're good. I just love Rickart's right there beside him. And Rickart's like, yeah. Rickart's a little savage, though. We continuously distinguish ourselves in battle. Right, Rickard? He goes, I feel like Corcus must have taken him in. That must have. And he tells Rickard it's farewell to the humble mercenary life. And I like that Casca's like, shut up, remember where you are. Like, and she says, from now on, our behavior could reflect badly on Griffith. So Casca understands that from now on, we are not a ragtag group of mercenaries. We are part of the king's army. So if we do something bad, it's going to look bad on Griffith. And Griffith has fought to get to this part of his journey, so we can't let him down. Corcus doesn't seem to be, again, Corcus is not so much bothered by it, which fascinates me why Griffith keeps him around. But again, like Judo said, Griffith believes in everything, so he's not just going to turn somebody away. But still, it's so fascinating to me, right? I don't know what to do with it. And then, of course, these other guys in the crowd are like commoners. They're like commoners, just peasants sitting here getting in our army, right? And then Casca says he's not here again. I couldn't help but laugh about Guts being out by the gallows, doing 200 swings of his sword, right? With the logs on it. He's just sitting there getting more swole, just doing his reps. He strikes me as like just the himbo boyfriend that is just a gym rat. And he just goes to the gym all day and gets beefed up and then comes home and Griffith's like, hey babe, I did all the work today, but what have you been up to? Like just soaking it all in. You know, that's what it reminds me of. Griffith's like, it's okay if he doesn't come. He's pretty and he's strong and he saves us. We're good. Like I love it. I love that there is a little air of Casca where she's probably mad that she's like, why doesn't he have to come? But again, Guts doesn't like being called a mad dog, but he's not really one for the formalities of society, so I could not see him sitting still during that. And he's freaking huge, so he'd stand out like a sore thumb anyway, so it's probably good that he's not there. But I thought that was hilarious. And then everybody, there's Pippin. Pippin is there, he just doesn't have a lot to say in this episode. And yeah, the one knight that has like, he looks like he's dyed his hair red too many times. It looks unnaturally red. He's just sitting there clapping, looking very unhappy about the whole situation. Is he the guy going to the One King? What is happening? We need to go back to the governor. Going back to the governor? We need to go back to that because his face looked familiar. What is happening? Huh. We're going to go back to that in a second. So yeah, and then Guts looking up at his sword. That sword is freaking huge. It is, I think, bigger than it was before. And then he's just sitting there holding his sword up. Now, it is not lost on me that image of Guts holding his sword and where it's placed is a pretty big phallic reference. And he thinks highly of his sword and how big it is. And I'm not going to argue about that. Or say anything else. I was just like, this feels very Freudian. I don't know what else to say. I was like, I'm just a boy playing with a sword. Oh, Wine Chan was a bad idea. So then we meet Judo. So Judo comes, right? And gives them information. Thanks for scouting, Judo. I'm sorry, but Judo sounds like Judas, which sounds like he's going to betray them. I don't know why, I don't know how, but why reveal his name at this point? I don't know. It seems, and maybe it's a red herring. Maybe it's the entire thing's a red herring and that's all there is to it. But it just strikes me as odd still, and I can't get it out of my brain. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so they're talking about the enemy supply base that they're going to raid. And they decide to raid and go head on into battle. And they're going to use Guts and Casca's group to attack them. And then they're like, we had to be extremely careful breaking through the central gate. And as soon as preparations are complete, we'll start the operation. And so then Corcus makes the comment that Guts is going to end up snatching all the credit again because it seems like Griffith's strategy, it takes Guts in mind. Like Griffith makes these plans knowing there's a chance Guts will go rogue or do things his own way. So it's almost like he's predicting what Guts is going to do ahead of time and mapping the plan out to accommodate that. But like Corcus says, he's like, it does make Guts the hero at the end of the day. And Corcus is kind of caught on. He's like, well, Griffith's just making out to give Guts all the credit. And Casca's like, and then he says, do you want to argue with me? Like he tries to challenge Guts, right? And I'm like, do you not see how swole he is? And what I like is that every time so far, this is twice now, that Corcus has tried to challenge Guts, Casca has stepped in and been like, no, Griffith said get along. Get out, move along, go. Like she's just trying to keep the peace and babysit these guys. And I don't know exactly how Guts takes it. I just take it as she knows Corcus likes to agitate, he likes to initiate, he likes to press buttons. She knows that Guts is not the type of person who would press buttons to because he doesn't rationalize those things. He just acts on impulse. And she's like, my only option is to butt in and stop it before it gets ugly. But we don't really know how Guts takes that because Guts doesn't know what she knows about Corcus and how he acts. And she says, we're no longer mercenaries. Keep that in mind. And Guts just kind of looks at her. She's like, if you go off on your own again, you will. And they just have a stare off, and then he just walks away. And she's like, Guts. And then Griffith's like, oh, it'll be okay. Like, Guts, there's a creepy factor with Griffith, just a little bit. There's a creepy factor with Griffith where he looks down at her and he's just like, it'll be okay. Kind of like, I don't know. Again, I don't want to spoil anything with Chainsaw Man, but there's a little bit of Makima in Griffith where he just says, like, it'll be all right. And you just kind of go, ugh. Like, it's fine. It doesn't seem anything, anything evil or anything, but it's just a little off-putting. There's just something a little off about it, about how chill he is with it all, right? Because he just smiles at her. He's like, I'm depending on you, Casca. And she's like, oh. Like, he knew exactly what to say to get her to shut up and do what he wanted. He didn't have to do anything. It was literally like Makima talking to Denji, being like, you can do this for me, right? And then Denji's like, oh yeah, sure. And she's like, okay. Like, that is power. That is control. That he can, on a dime, stop her and make her get back in line. Like, there's something chilling about it, honestly. But you're just like, what can we do? Nothing about him gives off this air that there's anything wrong with him. But I don't know, y'all. So then we go to the base and we meet Adon, who is the captain of this, right? We get to here with him. He says, I am the leader of the Blue Whale Heavy Assault Knights. Sir Adon, like, oh my God. Again, giving yourself like the biggest name possible. So we have the Blue Whale Heavy Assault Knights. Adon. Okay. It's Block. The Block Knights. The Block Sir Adon. Yep. He just gives himself this big fancy title and has like the nice lapel thing. He's like, why do you have to patrol this miserable supply base and its armory? He clearly thinks, he's like, well sir, it's because it's the Black Ram Heavy Cavalry. So they're with the knights that they were fighting the last time with the Tudors. Right? And so he just looks like he thinks of himself very highly and he's very pretentious. We are here as a substitute. So it's like he's not even one of the main forces. He was just called in as a sub, right? And he gets mad about that. He's like, I know that. Be quiet. Be quiet, minion. He's like, it's beneath one of the glorious Cobblerwitz family to be on this mission. So he's part of the Cobblerwitz family, whatever that is. But yeah, he says, damn. And that's when I'm assuming it's Judo that takes him out. It'd be funny if it was Rickert. But then they all just come barging in. And they just come barging in like Monty Python, just killing everybody left and right. Bodies flying everywhere. And realizing real quick that things are not going good. So he takes off. But they end up... What's fascinating is they were supposed to protect this armory. And he ends up blowing it up to try to kill them all. Almost like that was a premeditated thing. But Guts notices the bombs and tells Griffith not to go any further, but to retreat. And the thing about it is that Casca, of course, misunderstands. Casca misunderstands, thinks that he's defying orders again and tries to stop him. But on the one hand, during the reaction, I was like, well, Guts, why didn't you tell her it's a trap? But he said, I don't have any time. He had to get to Griffith first. So he prioritized Griffith over her, went to tell Griffith, and Griffith's like, okay, retreat. And that's when everything was blown up. And I like that the Knights are like, that was our supply base we just blew up. And he's like, it'll be fine. Let's go back and just tell them the job is done. But there were guys that were still there that died, that weren't even killed by Guts' men yet. Like, you just abandoned them and sacrificed them so you could try to kill Guts and the others. And then Griffith asks if everybody's all right. And I like that Rickard's there and he's like, I'm glad everyone's okay. I just love Rickert so much. He's like this little random ray of sunshine in this murder troupe. It's like, what do we do with him? I love him. He's great. But yeah, and then Casca realizes that Griffith's life was saved by Guts. And then and the thing that gets me is how savage Rickert is. Because they were like, man, the armory was destroyed. And they're like looking at all the bodies and the grisly destruction everywhere. Like there's just corpses and debris and like everything's on fire. And it looks awful. And they say that explosion was something else. All the spoils were destroyed. And Rickert says, oh, it's no big deal. We were able to achieve our objective and damage the enemy supply base. It was like, Rickert, you savage. There are dead people everywhere. What? But again, he's just grown up in this troop where that's the normal thing, so he doesn't think it's anything bad. I'm like, that's kind of terrifying, right? Just a wee bit. And of course, Casca leads Guts aside, and Guts is like, just get to the point! He's such a himbo. He's like, just get to the point and tell me what the deal is, if you got something to say. And that's when she says, you figured out it was a trap. And Guts is like, I just did whatever I wanted, like I always do. Like, he doesn't want to admit to her, and she's like, but it's different. You were desperately trying to protect Griffith, but I didn't understand that. And he just kind of looks at her, and at this point, this is the common ground. This is the foundation of what her and Guts can build a relationship upon. Whether it becomes anything beyond platonic, I don't know at this point. But the foundation is Casca realizes you care for Griffith just like I do. Like half of these guys, like Corcus, they're willing to go against Griffith's orders to feed their own agenda. But she's like, you have made me think this entire time you're just here for yourself. But that act of telling Griffith about the trap proves you care about him. And I care about him. So we have something in common. And that's really good. I like the way they frame this. And Guts doesn't deny it. He doesn't act tsundere. She just looks at him and she's like, so what I mean is, I'm sorry. And she just says it kind of like he would. And he just kind of looks at her, you know? And then she walks on by. But then she sees Griffith. And Griffith's just like, hey, friend. Like, oh, did you and Guts make up? Did you realize what I see in him? Do you see what I see in him? Isn't it great? It's kind of creepy the way he looks at her, just smiling like, do you like him like I like him now? You know, it's weird, right? But I feel like at this moment, Casca has realized her and Guts are a little bit similar, and we, the audience, are realizing they're quite similar. Guts and Casca are very similar, actually, and maybe Griffith finds them fascinating because of that reason. Griffith has a type, and maybe Griffith is also telling her in that moment, see, I told you Guts was okay, and she's like, damn it, he was right. And then she walks on by, and Guts just looks at her like, okay, cool. I'm glad we've got that solved. So then we cut to the very interesting part of the episode, which is what was going on behind the scenes. The Midland troops were attacking were like ants attacking me. So this is the Tudors. I completely defeated them. And so then they ask, well, can you confirm they were destroyed? Do you got proof, Adon? And he's like, of course, General Boscone. So we have General Boscone. We're going to put him on here. So we have General Boscone, who is working with this governor. He says, well, of course, General Boscone, I've got proof. And then he turns around with the spurs, kind of like what Casca has, and we pan up to him with this black armor. I want to see his face again to see, yeah. And he's like, oh, and he says, you buffoon. They're alive and they occupy the supply base. So the question is, how does he know that? How does he know they occupy the supply base? I guess because he knows what's going on, but we're going to talk about this here in just a second. Get lost. You waste no time in undoing this disgrace to the Empire. And then he leaves. So we have it that these two work for the Tudors, right? Okay. And then we see him with the eyes. I want to go back when we go back to the Midlands, the courtroom. And he says, calm down. And he has this there's this really creepy throne room with this governor and this fairy boy pouring him wine. I don't know what to make of that. It's very creepy. It says Governor Ginnon. Okay, so governor. So he's not a king, he's Governor Ginnon. I guess it's in this castle that's being held up here. I'm assuming the loss of the supply base changes nothing in the overall war. But we must inflict a crushing defeat on those insects. And he says, especially the impertinent band of the hawk. Is he the guy that's in the Midland court, except he's got a wig on? I want to go back and see him. Is he wearing like that red wig that doesn't look natural? Is that the same guy? I'm going to go look at him when we have the final courtroom and see. He says, the band of the hawk. And then the governor says, band of the hawk. He says, what's wrong? And it's almost like he knows them from before. How does he know them? Why don't we see his whole face? Why do we just see his eyes? So meanwhile, we have the kingdom where it's like, leave it to him. We'll just leave it. I'll trust him with the next offensive siege. Well, maybe it's not the same guy, but he looks similar. I'm like, is Boscone putting on a wig and dressing up like the guy that's in there? I want to go back and see. Do they have the same face? I'm like, do they? I'm like, they kind of, their eyebrows are a little dissimilar, I guess. But yeah, I guess they're different. But I thought maybe that for a second Bosco was like putting on a wig and like being a double agent and posing in the court of the Midlands, but he's not. He's with the Tudors. Okay. So in any case, the redheaded knight asks if they should really trust Griffith's team with such a mission. If I were the knight sitting at that table and there was like another band of guys offering to go do these hard tasks, I'd let them go do it. Why would I volunteer to go do it for them? I'm like, these guys are facing certain death going to do your missions. Why not use them? Why not exploit them and have them do all the missions for you? And while you guys sit at home in peace and quiet with your families. Why would you be against that? The only thing I can think of is if they get money and spoils notoriety out of all the successful missions they have, then that does take away from the knights on the court. But I'm like, if it was a really dangerous mission, I'd be like, you guys got this, right, Griffith? We can stay out of this? Okay, cool, thanks. I was like, why would you not want to give it to them? And they're like, I agree. My armory would lead the offensive if we were allowed. And then the king says, can I count on you? That line by the king, I was like, where he says, can I trust you? You gonna win? Can you win? Do you have perfect confidence in your ability to win? And it's silence from him. So like, no. He says, my intentions will not change. Send word to Griffith. When the preparations are finished, they'll take the field immediately. And he says, of course. But I think it's the same guy. He has the same eyes. I feel like it's the same man. I feel like Boscone is doing double agent duty and he's being on the Midland court, but he's gathering information to take back to the Governor Ginnon and the Midland and the Tudor men. I feel like he's a double agent. I feel like it's the same guy posing as two different people. He's just got like a dang wig on because it looks awful. Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe they are two totally different people, but he has like the same eyes. They look almost identical. I'm almost sure of it. Watch me be wrong, but yeah, he looks over, and when he looks across the table, he looks at this creepy Humpty Dumpty mother trucker, and I'm like, what is this business? Why does he look creepy? So why is he a double agent? Is he a double agent? And what is up with Humpty Dumpty? Why is he got one eye open, looking all creepy as hell? What's the deal? Are there traitors in the realm? Are there traitors on the Midland court? Something's amiss, right? And then we have Griffith standing before the castle they're supposed to invade. And there's thunder and lightning. Now, the crazy thing is he's grabbing the behelit. Like, is this the right decision? It's almost like a magic 8-ball where he's like, am I making the right decision? Is this the correct thing to do? And it's like thundering and lightning. We see the castle. There's a high tower. There's lots of guys with bows and arrows. It looks very secure. It looks fortified. It looks like it's going to be hell to try to get through. It's going to be a problem. And it looks like there's all these like side posts, like they have the outside where they can attack from within. it does not look like it's going to be easy for them to go and attack it. But he leads the charge, and Guts is in the lead, and then there they are. I don't know what to do about it. I'm a little bit worried because it seems like there may be some, there's something afoot, right? There could be some double agents, but from the Tudor realm that are in the Midlands court that are trying to get Guts in them because they feel like Guts and Griffith's group is the biggest threat. So they're trying to get rid of them first before they can attack, and they're still fishing information out. I don't know. This episode was a setup episode. It was setting up lots of things. It was setting up the relationships between Guts and Casca and where it's at. It was setting up how Corca still wants to kill Guts, where that's at. That Griffith still has this infatuation with Guts, and they're just besties. And then the fact that there could be a double agent working in the Midlands Kingdom that is also working for the Tudors. There's this governor that somehow knows the Band of the Hawk. And there's this creepy Humpty Dumpty guy that looks like he's maybe a traitor too. Like, everything is looking suspicious. And it's setting up that we don't know who we can trust, who knows what, and we don't know what's going to happen next. So, cheers. Cheers to Berserk. That was a good episode. And I'm really excited. A setup episodes can be boring sometimes, but I think with this series, it was really engaging. There was a lot to delve from it, and I'm excited to see where it takes us in the future. So I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I'm super excited for the next episode. I hope you all are too. But in the meantime, please no spoilers. I'm excited to hear your comments down below. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real soon with more Berserk. Bye!